In this episode of the Orange Nerd Show, we're talking all about aliens, UFOs, extraterrestrials. We're talking all this good stuff. I've always been really fascinated by life outside of our planet, and we're breaking it down deep, diving into this topic. We got Slimer, Michael Ebba, and the Italiano joining me today up next on the Orange Nerd Show. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of the Orange Nerd Show, where we're talking today all about UFOs and aliens. So if you got them, smoke them. You know what I'm saying? we're going deep today. We are going super, super deep today. But before we dive into the festivities, I'm going to introduce my fantastic panel. I got Mr. Carl's Jr. himself, the Italiano, joining me today. George, welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me back on. And it's going to be a fascinating topic. So, any J's, blunts, pots, weeds, whatever you got, light them up because this is going to be fire. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting topic. I had this conversation with Slimer actually while we were at Walt Disney World. We just got out of sci-fi dine-in, and it's a very interesting topic to say the least. And I think it'll do quite well with like a lot of these stories and a lot of these movies that are coming out, like with the one that's actually playing behind me right now, Avatar. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I do want to dive into a little bit too in this video where the Hollywood alien connection, because there is something to that for sure. But so you can just let everybody at home know, George, where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There we go. And down below, we got the one and only Slimer. Slimer, welcome back, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me back. And, speaking of Slimer, we're going to deep dive into the paranormal today. This is a fantastic topic. I've been quite interested in paranormal as it relates to UFOs for quite some time. Probably started when I started, back with Ghostbusters. The 1980s is probably when I started becoming interested in this topic. Actors like Dan Aykroyd, very heavy into paranormal. Then, we had the X-Files and Unsolved Mysteries, and I had a little incident myself. Maybe I'll talk about it on the show one day. Maybe I won't. But it is interesting. Depending if you're into this stuff. But we're going to talk aliens today. This is a topic that I think you no longer have to be a crackpot to talk about. I think we're now at the point where we can comfortably talk about these things in an intelligible way. But this is something that I believe has to be more normalized within the community, within the worldview. This is something that I feel needs to be okay to talk about because people are having experiences. Again, there's fake experiences, but there's people having legitimate experiences. And so that's what we're here to talk about today.
Absolutely. Slimer, if you can remind everybody where they can find you on social media, sir.
Slime Score 84 on X. You can find me right here on YouTube at Orange Grove 55.
There it is. And last, but certainly not least, we got the Ebanator, the one and only Michael Ebba. Welcome back, Michael.
OG, thank you so much again for having me on for this awesome discussion. I love aliens, bro, or ETs, whatever you want to call them, right? I'm so fascinated by the prospect of, high advanced civilizations, like thousands of millions of light years away, right? What their cities look like, how their biology is, what their language is, all that awesome stuff. I'm so excited. Let's get into it. You can find me on Instagram, Michael Ebba, and on Twitter at Michael Ebba 1991.
There we go. And Ebba, you better like them, otherwise they're going to come down and suck your brains out, or something.
Oh, hey, test was a good time, man.
So this is a fantastic video. This is actually provided by Slimer. This is Dr. Stephen Greer. So he's going to talk about UFOs and aliens and all this good stuff. We're going to play the video like we do in our reaction videos here on the channel, and we're going to kind of break it down along the way. But before I play the video, Slimer, anything you want to kind of add to this, add context or anything like that before I start?
Yeah, so Dr. Stephen Greer has been in the UFO community for about 30 years. He actually has worked directly with heads of with the defense intelligence agencies. He actually reported to President Obama, President Clinton, on anything UFO related, anything that he could get access to at the time. And right now, he's actually coordinating with the Senate Intelligence Committee to try to pass legislation to create an open pathway for people within the military that have experiences to be able to talk about this openly without jeopardizing their careers. In addition to that, what they're in the process of doing right now, and he's going to go into it in this video. They are trying to make it so that these deep black organizations, which are not under congressional oversight and under the rule of law, become underneath the rule of law, so that way they're actually controlled, not just budgetarily, but when it comes to intelligence, personnel, the flow of information, and things like that as it relates to national security, not just national security, but within the purview of the relationship of the government and the people that it represents. Because as it is right now, as you'll see here in this video, the Senate Intelligence Committee right now is like on page 1, book 1 of chapter 1 when it comes to UFOs, when they shouldn't be, especially if these deep black organizations are considering them a bigger threat to national security than actual nuclear weapons. But we'll get into it here. It's about a 45-minute clip that we're going to review. You guys, pause it whenever you guys want to discuss something. It actually goes on for 2 hours, and what after the 45 minutes, he has some special guests come on, some intelligence officers, Air Force officers, Marine infantrymen that have had encounters, and they actually go over this. But if you guys want to find out more about Stephen Greer and what he's doing, look up the Disclosure Project. But what this is right now, this is the National Press Club event that we're having here. This goes over what they've been working on, currents, with the Senate Intelligence Committee, and where they are right now with the data and what we know and what they're trying to get these deep black organizations to reveal through the proper channels to the public. So whenever you're ready to hit it, let's go.
Let's rock and roll.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm the founder of the Disclosure Project. I'm an emergency doctor, retired now, emergency medicine and trauma. I have been working in this area for about 33 years as a volunteer and as a provider of information to people in the United States government. You're seeing behind me a moment ago, this event 22 years ago on May 9th, 2001. At that event, there were 22 folks who came forward, and that information is all on our website and on YouTube. And those were folks who actually, some of them, who handled extraterrestrial bodies called EVANs, extraterrestrial biological entities, handled craft, were on retrieval teams, all kinds of witnesses. Now, that got a certain amount of attention in Congress, but they weren't ready at that time to do hearings, which they're preparing for. I understand from people in the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee. And so over the last 16 months, I've been asked to provide as much intelligence as I can to folks who have been working to get to the bottom of this since the Congress passed a law requiring the Director of National Intelligence to come forward with information to the extent that he had it. Now, one of the problems with that process is that, and I discovered this in 1993, in December 13th of that year, when I briefed the director of the CIA at the time, R. James Woolsey, for then President Clinton. He and the president had been waved off and not given information on this subject. That's when, as a young doctor, I realized that this was being run outside appropriate oversight and supervision by the office of the president and the Congress. And
so what he's saying here is even the president is not necessarily in the loop here. Is that, am I interpreting that correctly, Slimer?
Yeah, so in intelligence circles, they call that read in, right? So if you don't have to be briefed on anything, you're not read in on it. But if you're on a need to know basis, you're considered what's called read in on it, right? And that's not even with regard to intelligence clearance. It has to do with whether it pertains to your position within government as well, because you can have a secret clearance or you can have a TTSI clearance. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have access to every information. Now, the president is privy to pretty much everything for the most part, except things that they're not read in on. But as he gets into it here, the defense intelligence director, wasn't even privy to this information. The DIA, the head of the DIA, has oversight over the Defense Department. So they're like the CIA, but for the Defense Department of the United States.
Wow.
So these guys are going to outside sources like, hey, we're asking for this information, and they're telling us to kick rocks. And I'm the head of the DIA.
Wow.
You see how problematic that is?
Yeah, big time, big time. This is crazy.
Big time.
That is just a fact. So at that point, of course, it sort of upended my life in many ways, but we began to try to get information to the executive branch further, do research, provide whistleblower testimony, but it was all done very quietly. I then started providing information to folks in the Congress, such as Representative Dan Burton, who was chairman of the Government House Reform and Oversight Committee, Senator Dick Bryan of Nevada, ironically, home of Area 51, on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and many others. Those proceedings went forward as a volunteer effort, and all of this is still a volunteer effort. We're unfunded volunteers. And I do want to thank every one of the people here who made this happen, all these military whistleblowers coming forward, and our staff, and most of all, my wife, Emily. I will tell you, if my wife, Emily, hadn't been a rock, we wouldn't be here. She's amazing. So,
big shout out to Emily.
we got married 44 years ago in August, this coming August. So and we have 4 kids, 12 grandkids. So ironically, my grandkids are the ages of my daughters when I started this process.
Wow.
So it's beautiful, but like, really? Why is this taking so long? So in my young years, I thought, okay, we'll get this information to the president and key people in the Congress. I'll go back to my normal life, taking care of shootings and stabbings and what have you, and off we go. Well, that didn't happen, as you all know.
He worked in the ER. That's why he said
and I think the media.
I'm sorry, Summer?
He worked in the ER. That's why he said shootings and stabbings. He was an ER doctor.
Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
Has played a very key role recently in covering this, and there are whistleblowers beginning to come out in other settings besides this, and I applaud them, and I think more should do so. Now, the history of this is important because if you look at the testimony we have already, it's something like 70 to 80 people that we have debriefed, videotaped, have their transcripts, and it's available to the media and the public through our website and our YouTube channel. We've very transparently put out everything we can. To an extent, a not-for-profit entity can do it with volunteers and no office and no staff. So I don't want people to not get too grand here. This has been a volunteer effort for 33 years. And those people are heroes, as are these men up on the stage with me today.
Now, these people that have come forth, we said like what, 70 people, I believe. These are people that that either have witnessed these UFOs and aliens, or they've seen data in regard to that. Would that be correct, Slimer? They're privy to some sort of information as to what has happened, or even firsthand knowledge, right?
Yeah. So these are people that have actually been contracted out by these organizations to work on specific projects, whether it's been, reverse engineering crafts, whether it's been the biologics of the actual species themselves, crash recovery, you name it. I mean, the whole program is so big and compartmentalized. They have thousands of people working on these with these programs. But if you actually go to his website, it's really easy to find where these witness testimonies are. And I've actually watched a couple of these, and these aren't crackpot people, right? Like, these are doctors, military officers, they're coming out, they're putting their military careers on the line.
Wow.
And the things they say just don't sound made up, right? Like, you can tell when somebody's full of shit. Like, these people are not full of shit. They're highly credible, highly intelligent. Most of these people, like I said, are engineers, physicists, military officers. And, you're risking a lot by coming out and just disclosing this information, because they're, some of them disclose their names, some of them don't. But they're coming out and they're saying things that they probably shouldn't be saying. And when you hear some of these witness testimonies, it's really bizarre. Like the things they say are just not made up at all. It's not just a matter of just I saw a UFO. It's like no, like we had one and we used to communicate with it in sign language, and after a while, I learned how to communicate with humans. I mean, the amount of claims they're making are just like watch Richard Doty's, for example. Richard Doty specifically, he was an Air Force officer. He was part of the crash recovery program for a couple of years, and he's got some crazy stories. But yeah, these guys are real. They're not crackpots. They're not like the country guy on the streets like, yeah, I saw a UFO once. You know, these are like legitimate people that are credible. So
I read a piece about a few months ago actually that kind of blew my mind. I'll try to find it and I'll link it down below if I can. But it was somebody credible. It wasn't just like the country guy like you're talking about. It was some sort of military guy or someone along those lines. But he came across an alien craft, and he was assigned to go inside and kind of check it out. And what he found was, he said that the outside of the craft had a definite, like it took up a certain amount of space, right? Like anything in this world, like a car, an airplane. When you're standing from the outside looking at it, it has like you can. It's a point of reference. There's like that spatial, reference where you're like, how big it is, right? By eyeballing it. Well, he was saying that like it looked so big, when he walked up to it, but when he got inside, it was bigger on the inside than it was on the outside. And I'm like, crazy. That kind of blew my mind a little bit. I'm like, okay, that's trippy. So it would be like, basically like you see a car and you walk into the car and it's like a massive room in there. Like it's like a mansion in there. Like it's bigger on the inside than on the outside. That blew my mind. And he said he was only in there for a few minutes because I guess whatever was in there, it made him really dizzy and nauseous. He had to leave and he was like vomiting and he had like a reaction to it and everything. But I'll never forget that article because I'm like, that's crazy. And that's the kind of stuff I'm thinking about when I hear about these UFOs crashing out in the desert and stuff, crazy stuff like that. I mean, you got to remember, these are beings that if they can get here, they have technology way beyond anything we have. Just the fact that they're here signals that their technology is way better than ours. So it's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, they have that clown car effect where it looks like a certain size, but like multiple things can be inside it at once. Like you shove 10 people inside that little car, right? So that's probably like what that is, where it's like it looks like certain size, like you said, on the outside, but the inside's a lot bigger. And what I'm wondering like, what if that's like some kind of like dimensional like shift going on in there, and that's why people get nauseous if they go inside because their bodies can't handle this.
So that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point. What are your thoughts on that, George? In terms of like it being some sort of dimensional.
It definitely would make sense. I mean, I think what we know as humans is the atypical kind of stuff where something that's beyond our means, throughout the galaxy, throughout the universe. It's like it's stuff that we can't even predict, stuff that we can't imagine, but yet when it's right in front of us, it's almost like it's surreal, but yet hard to kind of understand, so to speak. But this is why I wanted to get onto this topic, because I find it very fascinating to, like, even with, and this was part of the conversation that Slimer and I were having at Disney World, because I remember going on Cosmic Rewind, and during like the show queue where they're talking about the Big Bang and the jump points of light speed throughout the galaxy, and it's like, how can one come up with something like that just at the top of their head? There has to be a point of reference as to any of these kind of movies, when it goes to Marvel, when it goes to George Lucas for Star Wars, James Cameron for Avatar and the Terminator, Steven Spielberg for E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind. If you look at all these great, phenomenal cinematic feature films, and it's like, yeah, these men are geniuses, that they come up with these characters and this plot line and the storyline and story arc and what have you. But when you really sit back and you look at it, it's like, but when you kind of have a point of reference as to that these people are saying that there are other life forms out there, it's like, well, how much of this is, where do we separate fact from fiction?
Well, there's been a running theory for a long time. I remember hearing about this when I was a kid, where like Hollywood is sort of in on it, so to speak. Maybe not even. Maybe maybe they don't even realize it. Maybe there's
Like
people,
subconsciously, yeah. Like they
Well,
talk to people and
well, not even subconsciously, but like maybe people that like what Slimer's talking about. People that these secret agencies that sort of investigate the supernatural. They're like, need to know basis or whatever. Like these very like top secret, groups. Maybe they've infiltrated, Hollywood and these studios. And what they're doing is they're sort of creating over 100 years of Hollywood. They're creating content, with aliens and what have you, sort of basically customizing the American public or the world as to this idea of other life and what they might look like and how they might behave and everything, sort of like prepping us for the inevitable, and I think that's kind of an interesting thing. Eva, what are your thoughts on that? Like the Hollywood kind of factor, or it's like, what if, like, we see it all the time with movies, right? The big head, the big black eyes, the skinny little bodies. We just saw, the Mexican alien that they remember recently in Mexico, right? We didn't know if it was real or fake, but that was a story a few months ago. But the aliens all look very similar. You think it's possible that Hollywood is sort of putting out, like, these aliens and the way they look, the way they might behave in film, to sort of prep and condition people to kind of be aware of it and be kind of normalize it for when the inevitability comes, when these beings or whatever end up showing up?
Well, I mean, we do always like hear like stuff like either like high people in Hollywood or like even government, right? That, there's like reptilians that are in like disguise as humans, or the like reptilians are controlling certain parts, right? So, but I mean maybe, but here's my thing. If that's the case, they're doing it for too long. Like, I already want to see the aliens. Okay, you guys have done this for like 40, 50, 60 years. Like, I just want to see the aliens now. Like, show me an alien that's alive, not dead. I want to see if it's alive and talking, right? Like, I get it, right? I get it. You got to have like certain like the top defense person, right? Like, they have the right to know. I think the entire Earth population should know there is another civilization out there that has visited Earth. I think that's very important, because this affects everybody, right? Not just certain demographics or certain countries. I think everybody should have the right to know that at least they exist, right? And what they are. Now, as far as it going beyond that, maybe you can have some classified stuff, but I want to see what these aliens look like. I want to see where they,
Yeah.
I want to know where they come from and what they're, why they're here. But other than that, like, yeah, I do think Hollywood, someone or some people in there have connections to whoever that know about these alien species.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting. And that's exactly when you say we have the right to know as a global community. That's a perfect segue into the rest of Dr. Greer. That's what he's fighting for.
Now,
Thank you, Emily, again.
and just a quick trip through some of the previous witnesses. We had Sergeant Clifford Stone. He was on an NBC team, nuclear, biological, chemical, back in the 60s, was actively involved in retrieving extraterrestrial vehicle and bodies, what have you. They were called EBINs, extraterrestrial biological entities. We have his testimony. It's there for anyone to see. We have people like John Callahan, who is the top accident investigator at the FAA when the Japan Airlines event happened in the 1980s during the Reagan years, and they tried to cover it up. He took the original FAA tracking tapes. The Disclosure Project have the originals. You're welcome to see them. Those of you in the media, we can try to get those to you. So all of these sort of testimonies and witnesses have come forward already. But now we're at the stage where there's real utility, because the official law now is that the government has mandated the Pentagon, the intelligence community, to research this and report back to Congress. Now, there's a problem we'll get into a moment with that whole process, which is important that you understand, and particularly the media understand. But first, I want to tell you what we've handed off this week to the Congress and to the White House and to the Pentagon AARO office, the AARO office that's tasked with investigating this. So we can go to the list of the material in the archive. It has government documents in the tens of thousands from all those countries: United States, Canada, Australia, Russia. Soviet Union, United Kingdom, and others. We have 145 top secret facilities, some of which are black sites that are named and on a map. You'll see them in a moment. The supporting documentation of it are in the archive, meaning the witnesses' testimony, who they were, when they were there, where the locations is, sometimes up to where the gate is. And that's been handed over to the United States government this week. There are 752 and counting whistleblowers who've come forward over the years. Some of them are now deceased. But what's important, even the ones who are deceased, if you go to their history and their command and what they provided, there is an investigative thread to follow back in. Very important. There are also files with all these witness testimonies that have been provided up to date. In the archive are 121. We learned of another one last night from a very high level whistleblower who is not ready to come forward. So there's actually 122 crash retrieval cases of these UAPs. And those are documented. Michael Schratt, who is an aerospace historian and is working full-time with us beginning in November, had worked for Lockheed, but not the Skunk Works.
So, Slimer, when he says 122 UFO retrieval cases, this is like actual crash sites of an actual UFO that they have they have a craft, or pieces of a craft at least, that they were able to retrieve. 122 of these
that they know of, yeah. And so it turns out that the way that they've been downing these ships are through EMP weapons. So they use electronic devices that operate off of say the same physics of electricity, for the most part. Something that generates an energy source, whether it be, quantum gravitational, cold fusion, something beyond, quantum level physics, right? But it's still, an electronic device nonetheless. But they have reverse engineered, or they have had EMP devices for some time now. And that's what they're utilizing to down these crafts, because they can't do it with any sort of conventional means. I mean, these ships that are traveling, 5, 10, 15 light years away. I mean, mind you, a light year, the speed of light is 200,000. What is it? 200,000 miles per second, or 2,000? Yeah, 200,000 miles per second is the speed of light, right? So a light year would be 200,000 miles per second for every second of a year. Right. So the nearest solar system to us that we know of, or the nearest star system to us, nearest star system is Alpha Centauri, which is about 4.5 light years away. Which traveling at the speed of light would take you 4.5 years to get here. So they're not using light speed. These crafts are using either wormholes or quantum gravitational devices that allow them to basically travel from point A to point B, without actually traveling the distance in between, but actually like collapsing the space in front of them, which utilizes some kind of like antimatter propulsion, which require the energy of the sun. And these are things that current physicists actually know with regard to any sort of like theoretical work when it comes to actual interstellar space, and not just something that goes like 10% the speed of light on like solar sails. But yeah, going back to the crash sites, yeah, there are crash recovery teams. They've existed for pretty much since Roswell. Actually, to back up a little bit, the first crash UFO that we know of was not 1947 Roswell. It was in 1943, shortly after the Manhattan Project started, and we started detonating nuclear devices with Dr. Oppenheimer in Nevada. Once that started happening, that's when all the UFO activity started to happen in our solar system. And it was because of the fact that we learned how to split the atom. And that, I believe, in my opinion, was actually observed by extraterrestrials that live within this, within this quadrant. And they saw it, they observed it, they came to identify or investigate what was happening. And, that's That's when
Well-
all this started, really. But it started all with the Manhattan Project.
So that's interesting, Slimer. A lot to unpack here. So I want to ask you: is there any concern? Because you said they brought these ships down, these UFOs down, using the sound waves, right?
No, electromagnetic pulses. So it's a pulse that's electromagnetic, and essentially what it does, it kills everything that's electronic on anything.
Okay, so they knocked down with the electronic pulse. So how it was there? Is there a concern amongst like the intelligence community that bringing these down is gonna like these beings are gonna feel like this is an act of war, and they might maybe retaliate against us, or we've been doing it for so long that it doesn't seem to be an issue.
So you got to remember, this isn't the regular intelligence committee that's doing this. This isn't the CIA. This isn't the FBI. This isn't the NSA. These are organizations that fall outside of these organizations. Think like Men in Black, right?
And that's actually, before you continue on, Slimer, this was actually part of the conversation we were having, because I asked Slimer, I said, of all the information that he was giving me when we were sitting there at Hollywood Studios, I asked him, I said, is there such a thing as a quote-unquote Men in Black, like a type of facility or type of agency that's not on any government list? And then this is what he's explaining now.
Yeah, this is what he's explaining here. And the reason they consider them more of a threat, and the reason I don't think they're so much concerned as whether the aliens are a threat to us or not, or at least at the onset, was because, remember, in the 1940s, we had just discovered nuclear power, and nuclear power was the ultimate tool at the time. And the U.S. government, whether it was, the legitimate congressional U.S. government or these organizations which started as, like skunk work, black works projects, their ultimate concern was sorry about the siren in the back, was preventing any other country or enemy, whether it be planetary or non-planetary, from getting nuclear access. And
Okay.
we didn't know what the aliens had. They knew what we had, but in the process of preventing them from getting what we had, we just started intercepting them.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I say something to that, right?
Sure.
Like, okay, we start intercepting, these advanced life forms, right? That obviously, as you said, right, if they come from millions of light years away, these things are way more advanced, right? So I don't know why, as a human species, and I'm gonna bring this up too, like anything that's different or unknown, we tend to, as a society, attack it, right? I don't really like that mindset because, as you pointed out, like what if it starts a war, right? Now, in regards to like what a Slimer was saying, is like, sorry, um, I just lost my train of thought. What was I just talking about?
You were saying that you don't like the fact that we just shoot these down without any really concern about if it could start a war or not.
Right, yeah, and it's like, so I don't understand why we have to do that, right? I understand, like, we have to be like, we have to kind of protect like our society and whatnot, but why are we concerned with with them knowing our nuclear stuff, when if they're that advanced, they could probably blow us up in a matter of minutes. Like, they wouldn't need to use nuclear bombs. They could use something else that's even way more destructive. So I mean, just in my opinion, I think that if aliens actually, or any civilization, really want to destroy us, I think they could.
So you
Without
think Ebba, you think that any being out there that are crashing here on Earth, they're showing like kind of like almost like restraint, like they could squash us if they wanted to.
I believe so, yes, in my opinion.
The
Because
Japanese can squash us right now. So, I mean, obviously, like, out of like world beings, I think honestly, with like a click of a finger, we would be done. I actually agree with Michael on that.
Right,
I think that if they really wanted to take us out, I think they're trying to learn our ways. I think they're trying to learn our habits. I mean, I don't know why, but
yeah.
it is.
Well, actually, George, I have an answer for that. So I don't know if you guys watch Dr. Michio Kaku. He's a theoretical physicist, and his day job is string theory. But they said that there's three types of civilizations: planetary, stellar, and galactic. So for planetary, we're about 100 years or so away from achieving that status. Because right now we get our energy from like dead plants and coal and whatnot. So I'm wondering if these ETs are really curious about our progression as a society and species into the next level.
Interesting.
And I just have to clarify, when I say the Japanese could take us out, I do mean in intelligence wise. Because the Japanese are like way beyond, like with technology and what have you. Like they could rule the world if they wanted to.
Well, they have Godzilla, so
exactly. And they also have Tokyo Disney Sea, so
right.
Unconventional operations. And he is doing those investigations for us, and also the beautiful illustrations of what these witnesses have had to share, and you will see those. Then we also have the documents that includes names of witnesses. In other words, government documents that are not declassified that we have. Now, we'll get into this in a minute. And there are many so-called deep throats who provide intel on the background, who are working with us, some of whom are very senior in these operations. Others are people who have just incidentally been involved. Okay, next.
So incidentally, would be like Bob Lazar.
I'm sorry, Slimer. What was that? I'm sorry, sir.
So incidentally would be like somebody like Bob Lazar.
Okay. If you want to clarify that, what do you I'm sorry. What do you mean by that exactly?
So Bob Lazar is one of the first. He's one of the first people to come forward as a witness testimony to working on one of these projects. He came forward a couple of decades ago. He actually has a podcast on Joe Rogan. I think it's got like 50 million views. It's maybe something like that, but a lot of people watched it. But he was just an engineer, well known in the area. Didn't really do anything but like build rockets and stuff like that. I mean, he wasn't like a NASA scientist. He was a local engineer, and he was hired on to work on something. And it turns out that they wanted him to reverse engineer a craft that used like gravitic propulsion. He worked on it for a couple of years. He got terminated for violating protocol, and he went public with it. And since then, he's gotten a lot of public threats. They've tried to run smear campaigns against him. To discredit his actual experience, but they haven't been able to. But he was one of the first. But what I mean by incidental is that's how a lot of these people end up getting in these organizations. They're prominent in their field of study. They get brought on. They're not getting told what it is. They find out incidentally what it is, and then once they start learning about it, it's like wow. I'm actually inside of an aircraft right now, and they're trying to, they tell me, hey, you need to try to figure out what's going on with this thing.
So essentially, it's kind of like when you say incidental. It's sort of like if you go in because you fell down, you hurt your knee, right? Mm-hmm. You go into the doctor, the ER, and you get an X-ray, and they find a tumor in your leg. The tumor was an incidental finding, basically, right? Like they weren't going in there looking for a tumor, but while they were there looking at your injury, they found the tumor. Is essentially what you're saying with this incidental stuff, right?
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that because what they'll try to do is they try to give these specialists as little information as possible, but just enough for them to produce the results that they want, so they can move forward with the project. Wow. So, for example. In the intelligence community, there's something called compartmentalization. So like Michael, George, and you and me might be all working on the same project, but we don't talk to each other. We don't email each other. We don't even know that we exist. But we're working, like you might be working on the physics of the UFO. George might be working on like the propulsion system, and Michael might be working with the biologics team that's actually doing the analysis on the people flying it. But we're not even talking to each other.
Well,
that's wild.
And Slimer, and because I watched that video with him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I remember he said like the issue with that, because under like obviously you want to have secrecy, but the issue with keeping everybody so separate is that sometimes you need to know how other aspects of the ship work in order to understand how what you're working on works, right? And you can't have that if you don't have that communication. So the research takes forever because
exactly.
Exactly. It's very compartmentalized. Very interesting.
Yeah. They'll keep it very compartmentalized. They'll sacrifice progress for intelligence secrecy.
Wild.
Pictures of all these guys that we already have come forward. They're there for you to see. They run from NASA folks and all that. It's in the YouTube channel. It's in the archive. Those were done. All these were up to 2001. So we're talking a long time ago, but those exist. It's perhaps a tree that fell in the woods a lot of you didn't know about. Next. And I want to go through this very quickly. This is just a scrolling list of the witness list. Each one of these witnesses has a file where they have either been interviewed or provide intelligence and corresponded with me, and that I have debriefed personally over the last 30 years. So you're going to see this goes on for about 100 named persons, and then it becomes a black list. It just has to be blacked out. Why? I'm not holding anything back except what I've been requested to by people whose confidence I have told them I will keep. So I'm a medical doctor. We understand patient, doctor confidentiality, like an attorney understands that. But until these guys want to be unmasked and come forward, we will not disclose their names, except the redacted list is something available to the media and to the public now. In addition to that, and it's very important, the unredacted list and the full files, including all my correspondence files, are in the unredacted archive. It's about, let's see, isn't it cool that you can put terabytes on something like this? This is all it is, but it's about a terabyte. We have about 8 terabytes of information. We're in the process of scanning it and trying to put it into a searchable database. This has been provided to the intelligence community, as I mentioned, Pentagon, Congress, and the White House. It is also the redacted version would be available to the media if you can help us get it on a hard drive. We're really not funded properly, and each of these costs several $100s. So we gave out 1,000 of them. It's more than we've ever had. But nevertheless, it is an open archive. Eventually, we want to have it on an internet site. But the names that you're seeing now, you're going to see all their information is blacked out. And it's because they've asked not to be named. Now, they can be known by people who are working in a SCIF and have a vault and who have the ability to then pursue it in the interest of national security. That has been provided to these key offices. So I just wanted to give you that as sort of an overview of how the list was constructed. It is by no means complete. We have a new whistleblower coming forward every week or two now at this point. And Michael Schratzner nodding his head. Yeah, this has become a torrent. And so we want to set up a mechanism. We're recommending that you'll hear what our recommendations are for the President and Congress to resolve this crisis. Next. So I wanted to mention that these bases, if you look at them, let's go to, this is where all these illegal operations have happened. I'm saying illegal because we can prove that this information, as Senator Inouye said, you'll hear his statement in a moment, has been run by a very shadowy, deep black operation. And we're not talking the legal black budget of the United States. We're talking about projects that presidents and CI directors and secretaries of defense, members of the Congress who have a need to know and are cleared TSSCI in SCIFs, secure compartmented information facilities, have been blatantly either gaslit, denied access. That is the foundation of everything we've done, is that these projects are a priori illegal and therefore unconstitutional and have to be reined in, because not doing so is a threat to the national security. So here is your list. I'm not going to go through 145 sites. Some of them are black sites. Some of them are bases you know about, like Wright-Patterson, Edwards, Nellis, Area 51, so-called. But all of them are based on witness testimony and intelligence we've gathered over the last 30 years. And it's time for it to be disclosed. And so now you have it. Next. Here's one. And people go out in the Mojave Desert. Michael Schratt took this picture when it was okay to fly near it in a small private plane. It is the site for the Lockheed Range underground entrance. What's in there? Well, there are man-made, and this is the big story, no one's telling you. A large number of the UAPs are in fact deep black budget electromagnetic field propulsion devices based on the study of extraterrestrial vehicles that began in the 1940s. That is a fact. We can prove it. So when you see these sort of places, just remember many of them. I want to be careful what I'm saying here. Someone who is in charge of the black budget of the United States in 2022 went out to the Lockheed Skunk Works based on some information he had. He was shown a bunch of old jet aircraft. He knew he was being gaslit. And they reached out to me and I said, what do you want? I'll give you everything we have. And that's what's happened over the last 16 months. So I cannot name this person, but they're a wonderful person of enormous integrity and a hero of our country.
So you guys want to pause real quick?
So I want to just go through quickly.
Do you guys want to talk about that? Because he actually said a couple big things here.
Yeah.
He said we have reverse engineered electromagnetic crafts.
So I've heard Slimer. I'm not sure if this is one of the one he's talking about, but I've always heard that the TR-3B, which is a triangular aircraft, is one that's been reverse engineered.
Yeah.
Is that one of the ones?
Yeah, that one and the Tic Tac shaped one. That the F-18 pilots testified in Congress last year.
Yeah.
Those are reverse engineered. Now, what's funny about those is they actually, so one of the naval ships that was in the naval formation when that happened, apparently some personnel landed on the deck, went into wherever their radar equipment was, and they took all of the data that was being recorded from that interaction. But what the radar tech, the sailor that was actually there when that happened, and they were looking at the radar data that was coming in from these crafts, he said, they actually interviewed him, and he said that these things went from 38,000 feet to 0,000 or 0 feet in like 0.78 seconds.
Oh, Jesus.
Man, that is so fast.
Yeah, which translates to like 30 Gs. And as you got, I don't know if anybody knows this, but humans can only tolerate about 7 Gs before they pass out. So these things they're way beyond what we could do, like way beyond conventional tech. Right now, they just recently they just tested the fastest plane, rocket, whatever you want to call it. I think they got it to about 5,000 miles per hour. That's way beyond. Like, this is way beyond 5,000 miles per hour.
Yeah. Well, that plane still has to bank. You know, it has to still make these wide turns or whatever. These crafts are like this, like that would kill anybody, dude. Inside that thing. So I'm thinking, Slimer, like that. These aircraft, they have some type of gravitational mechanism inside the aircraft that prevents those hard G's on you. Because otherwise, like if you're us or an alien, no biological being is going to survive that amount of force at all.
Yep. What I'm thinking is happening is the gravitational bubble that it creates. It creates like a quantum gravitational field, and so when it traverses, it's not actually traversing space time here. I think what it's doing is it's actually collapsing it, so that way inside the bubble is still 1 G, but it could actually create any G outside of that bubble. It can go 50 G, 100 G, 200, 300, 400 G, but inside the bubble it's still 1 G because it's creating this quantum gravitational flux where it just like collapses space in front of it and expends it behind it.
Yeah.
And so it's not really traveling the distance. It's more like just bringing the object to it.
Right. So,
like,
sorry, Slimer.
But you're right. It goes 90 degrees and it can go like this. And like so many F-18 pilots, so many Air Force pilots have said these things just go any way they want. And I mean, we don't have there's no way we could do that without reverse engineering something, because in order for us to make that leap in aerospace engineering, the jump would have to be the technological jump that we would develop on our own would have to go forward 1,000 years in a matter of 10 years. And that's never happened.
Yeah, no, but to your point though, right? And this is back to like this traveling through space, right? You know, light speed. Light speed is not the thing, because what you're talking about, Slimer, is, you know, pretend this is the craft, right? This mouse is the craft. You're pulling and bending space from here back this way, and so for you, you're not really like, I mean, you're not you're moving, but you're not really moving, right? You're kind of in one spot, but space and time is bending around you, and you're getting to your destination that way,
Yep.
like
That's
quick.
crazy. It's kind of almost like the Indiana Jones part on the Indiana Jones Adventure at Disneyland. Like your vehicle stays still, but it's
Yes.
the room that moves, basically.
Exactly.
exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
For all you park people out there, make it a little,
Bringing it
visual.
home.
Some of
Bringing
these
it home.
Bringing it home. Exactly.
new ones who aren't here. Now, the reason these have initials, they're waiting to be cleared for coming forward publicly. They're afraid. Let me explain to you why they are. This man, here's just his incoming letter. We get these every day. Now, he's afraid he'll lose his pension. He signed an 80-year non-disclosure agreement. He has been threatened, and some of these have seriously had their lives threatened. It's a very thuggish situation going on that the Department of Justice and FBI need to drill down on very quickly. Next. Here's an illustration of one event that he was involved in back when there was a extraterrestrial vehicle that crashed and then ultimately ended up at.
This is actually the spot they found the Allspark, just so you guys know, just for reference. No, I was kidding.
well, gee, so here's the thing. Speaking of crash sites, right? Usually, because back to the whole Men in Black thing, I've heard a lot of stories where, like, someone out in the farmland or whose house there's a crash, they go over there, right? And then within like minutes, there's already military and police already surrounding the thing. And then like later, Men in Black show up to my door and they take they take all my computer sets of everything, like all my data and evidence I had of it, and they take it and it's gone. And sometimes I hear like that they actually threaten the people. They're like,
Wow.
well, if you do this again, you'll hear from us, or you'll be in a hole somewhere, or something like that, right? But they come quick, dude. It's weird. And then also, apparently, Men in Black, their car has no like emblem or insignia about where they're from, so that's pretty interesting stuff.
And the reason they come so fast is because it's a controlled crash.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they use EMPs. They're just there to recover the vehicle. They made the craft come down.
Wow. Crazy, man.
Lawton, Oklahoma, near Fort Sill. This man has been in a skiff with these objects. These illustrations are based on his direct testimony and hours of discussions since 2016. Here is a small extraterrestrial body, about 39 inches long, that was retrieved in that operation. There are extraterrestrials of various sizes.
It's interesting. Okay, so this is a very small little guy here, right? And this isn't too dissimilar from what we've seen a few months ago from the Mexican alien that we saw, right? I think that was in front of the Congress in Mexico, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. This little alien. I mean, he was small like this guy. That's interesting. I never really when I think of aliens, they look like that for sure. The big head, the big eyes, the whole thing. But I don't picture them that tiny. I don't know. I mean, what do you guys take on that? Like in terms of the size of these things, we're seeing more and more evidence that they're pretty small.
So I have a kind of theory, right? My own kind of theory I have with these aliens, right? And especially with how they look, because you get like these aliens, right? It's like these grays. They have kind of like bigger heads. They have little skinny bodies, a slit for a mouth, like either a slit for a nose or no nose, right? And apparently, like they're kind of naked or something sometimes. I don't know. So it's like, do they even have private body parts? But I'm thinking, maybe because since these things are so advanced, these aliens must have had have been here way before humans have, either in another galaxy or another planet, and have been around a lot longer. So I'm thinking, what if in like a evolutionary standpoint, their bodies have progressed to a point where, because they've been so advanced, they don't need all those extra kind of material things. Again, like, do they even eat a lot? How come their eyes are so big and black? Do they see some type of like colors or infrared that we don't? Do they not need a lot of muscle in their body because they have so much technology that they can use to replace for that? So that's just kind of where my head is.
Oh no, you bring up fascinating points. I mean, it's true. I'm like you, Ebba. I question everything. Do they even need food in the first place?
Right.
Like, how do we even know they need food in the first place? Maybe they're nourished some other way.
Well, and I think based off of these type of alien-like beings, I feel like these are the species that is kind of like more close to us, so to speak. That they're the ones that are trying to, understand the human population, understand the human race, but because I feel like that there, in my opinion anyways, that there's many more different kind of species of aliens or extraterrestrial type of beings out there. You have to think there's how many galaxies, you know, like just within one universe.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it goes back to, as we were talking about the Men in Black, if you remember the outro of the movie where the camera zooms out and it shows Earth, and then it shows all our galaxies of the stars into one galaxy that goes back further into one universe, and that one universe is one marble that is in a sack of other marbles of one big gigantic alien. So it's like when you kind of think of that, it's like, well, yeah, these are aliens that are watching over us, but what other species are actually watching them that's watching us?
Right. Yeah. And this picture, like, it's so sad because
Damn, I need a joint after that.
Right. But like this picture, I'm like, it makes me feel sad because I'm like, oh, these poor little, like, you know, little aliens, right? Like, I want to like hold it. I'm like, you're okay, you know? And like, and now they're like in this military fucking government camp, dude, like being hauled off. That sucks.
It is sad, and they are kind of cute. I got to be honest.
I know.
Sizes, the last known count I had of different civilizations involved with this, about 60 to 70 in that range, and I think there could be more next.
Did you guys get that part?
This is
where
one
he
of
just
the
said?
underground command centers that
He said that there was more. He said there was many civilizations.
Yeah, he said basically that whistleblowers have told him that they've encountered 60 to 70 different civilizations of species.
Dude, Slimer, that is dope. Okay, I want to know about that. I want to see that, dude, because I think about all these civilizations, right? I'm like, okay, what do their cities look like? What does their transportation on their planets look like? You know, like, do they play sports? Do they have theme parks? Like, what kind of stuff do they have? Dude, I'm so curious about their technological achievements, bro. I'm
Well,
hyped.
and this is what actually brought on to the conversation, because you take for what we know, a fictional world like Pandora with the Na'vi, you know, so it's like when you really think of that, it's you can't discount that notion of saying that a world like Pandora doesn't exist, because people would say, well, there's no proof that it exists. There's no proof that it doesn't exist. It's
And I'm telling you right now, it's as big as the universe is. It's mathematically impossible for there not to be some other intelligent life out there. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's just too. You know what I'm saying? And here's the other thing too that kind of blows my mind a little bit is there might be, you know, they talk about all these species, right? 60 or 70 species. There's probably in some other world human being. I mean, we're here. So what makes you think that there's not other human beings on other planets millions of light years away? Go ahead, Slimer. I'm sorry.
It's so funny you mentioned that, dude, because there have actually been crash recoveries where the ship wasn't so damaged that the actual pilots or passengers, whatever you want to call them, the crew members, got injured to the point of death, and they actually escorted the aliens into custody. And one of the artist renderings of the aliens, they look like humans. They look like humans, dude. And
some ones I've seen, Slimer, were blonde hair, blue eyed. Is that where like Hitler got the whole like blonde hair, blue eye thing? Was from these ETs?
I don't know. I don't think so. It's very possible.
That expects my ex mother-in-law. That answers that question.
But you know what's funny about these extraterrestrials? So I'm going to go ahead and throw another one at you guys. So they actually have classified them into extraterrestrial and interdimensional, and that you can't confuse the two. That there's actually both kinds.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Slimer, sorry, dude, I'm so excited, bro. I'm so excited. Okay, so I'm glad that you brought up interdimensional because it makes sense, right? When you see some of these videos, it's like the lights, like, you know, they have these like multiple lights. Dude, these things they'll combine and then separate, and then they move in sync, and then they go back up to like the bigger ship or whatever. It's like, okay, what is that? And or like they just disappear. I'm like, okay, are these things coming in and out dimensions? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, like they just flux in and out of reality, like quantum. Like just quantum fluctuations, man. Just bloop bloop, and they just a portal dimension. It's I wouldn't put like OG said, man. Mathematically, the chances are that, you know, like it's undeniable. Like, you know what I mean? Like for every every idea you have, anything you can imagine when it comes to different life form, life has probably made it.
Well, and here on Earth, we had the dinosaurs, but before human. There's probably another planet out there where dinosaurs are still roaming their planet.
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Take even into consideration, even with shape shifting, you could have these type of beings that kind of can morph and shapeshift into anything that they can walk among us, and we don't even know, that they're like literally standing right next to us.
Like your ex-mother-in-law.
Like my ex-mother-in-law. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
He was assigned to from the Pentagon with Technical Management Office and then some other offices, and investigated some criminal activities that occurred with a 3-star general related to this subject that the Department of Justice was basically unable to prosecute because they were denied access to the operations. Next. Here's one that was also in this another facility as an extraterrestrial vehicle. He actually was there very close to it. This gentleman wants to come forward. He needs to be protected. And this is why we're calling for explicit witness protection and explicit pension and asset protection for these whistleblowers. Next. And this is just an indication of a type of electromagnetic system that actually can cloak any tank or any object that we've developed over the years, and he was read into this as well. Next. So there's another gentleman. I'm going to run through these very quickly. We'd be here for 30 hours if I didn't. I'm just giving you a tip of the iceberg, right? This is a guy who is at the Dugway Proving Grounds, very key facility, MS we call him. He worked for C. Martin Corporation, contractor, and he was in a facility that had an extraterrestrial vehicle that was being studied by scientists. He knows the chief scientist involved. He has named that individual to us, and they can all be subpoenaed now. So this object was there in 2009. He didn't know the date of acquisition, but he thought it was fairly recent. Next. He also was read into and had the chief scientist show him the location, which we now have, of a DUM, deep underground military base that is in the Dugway sector, so-called Avery sector, Avery, and it has huge capacity for parking. You go in, and there's a vast underground complex in that location. That location has been handed off to investigators with the U.S. government. Next. This gives an illustration of the size of this. You could put easily on the platform that goes down the Air Force One. It's a very large elevator, goes down underground. Next. And then we have this gentleman. He was not long ago in the Nellis Range in the Nevada test site north of Nellis Air Force Base. And he, next slide, was on a retrieval team. Now let me explain how this guy got involved. He was recruited out of Fort Campbell to be somebody to be on a retrieval team with a top secret clearance to pick up when we have an accident with a helicopter or jet, because there's classified technology on those often. Our YouTube pilot here will explain that perhaps.
Yeah, pause it.
But the point is, he went from there.
So classified technology. So what he means by that is, like, let's say you're flying a military personnel aircraft that moves, it's a troop transport. Okay, so that troop transport is going to have navigation systems. It's going to have comms, which the Hop Freak. They have specific encryptions that are made by, the U.S. military, and if any foreign country got access to that information, they would have access to our maps. They would have access to our comm systems, and therefore they'd be able to intercept military communications and know exactly what we're doing. So that's what he means by that. It's not like they're flying super secret stuff, but a lot of it has to do with radio systems, navigation systems that belong to the United States.
Interesting.
And that was preparatory to him being on a retrieval team for this. So he was involved with this operation. It was a man-made, a so-called alien reproduction vehicle. It's called by some people, or AT. A lot of people just call them advanced technology. It's a euphemism. But it's based on studying the electrogravitics and magnetic field propulsion systems of the interstellar vehicles that involve the science of quantum entanglement and, going, basically you want to go from one point in space and to another, say this is one point, this is another. You're not going through a straight line. You're folding space-time. That's how you do it. And we're not going to do a physics lesson here. Had enough of that in pre-med. But anyway, so this is an object. And I'm not a physicist. We have a physicist here. But this object was retrieved because it became disabled. Some of these retrieval operations are not extraterrestrial, but they would like sometimes the public to think maybe it was, because the bigger secret, I'll tell you right now, is not the extraterrestrial issue. It's these technologies, which an unsupervised and frankly illegal operation have, which is a threat to the national security, period. This we will prove. And this is a bigger threat, the existence of these in the hands of unsupervised operations that have escaped the oversight of the President of the Office of the President and the Congress since 1956 to 1960. Hence Eisenhower's speech, beware the military-industrial complex. This is actually what he was talking about. I know people who have since passed away, like our witness, Stephen Lubkin, who was at the White House with Eisenhower, who said point blank, the president lost control of these projects and that he was very upset and angry about it, but these projects became so compartmentalized that he no longer could control them. So this is one. You can see there are rivets and what have you. And we'll go through this later after our fine gentlemen and whistleblowers speak. But I want to give you this overview really quickly. Next. So this is actually an extraterrestrial vehicle, a very large one that was at the Nellis North Range. We have the location of the helipad. It's Delta Force manned. This occurred back in that same era, around 2009, about 65 feet across. It's seamless, but it has sort of a clamshell part of it. There was a ramp that rolled out, like he said, like a roll-up that came out of it. And there was a ARV above it that was headed in lock. It was an electromagnetic lock on this object. I think it was stunned, and that's how it was brought down.
Pause it real quick.
This is not infrequent.
So that's the TR-3B craft that Michael mentioned earlier. That's actually reverse engineered. They're seen over Mexico. They're seen over California, Utah, Nevada. Anytime you see a triangular shaped UFO reporting, it is either a derivation or a TR-3B, but I believe they have more than just one type of craft like this. But I believe that these are what they utilize to intercept crafts, because these things can actually travel at 90-degree angles, and they can go far beyond 7, 8, 9 Gs. These things are quick. I think that's what they utilize to intercept these crafts and bring them down, and then to control them once they're brought down, just like this, how this picture depicts.
So people assume when they're from the normies, for lack of a better word, when they look up and they see this triangular thing, they're thinking, "Oh, aliens!" It's actually not aliens. It's a reverse engineered. Wow, that's wild. That's wild. Go ahead, Michael.
Real quick, I want to say, so for the craft that we see here, right? Kind of back to my point about like the whole species evolution for aliens for living so long, is the thing I want to bring up was the reason why I don't think they're as materialistic is because when you look at pictures or you see like craft or people who describe alien craft, a lot of times there's not usually a huge symbol on these things or any type of identifier. So I'm like, or also too, they have either very few windows or no windows, and they're very kind of sleek, like this metallic looking crafts right here. And it's like, to me, that shows that they don't really care about the image of what they're flying, more so the practicality of what they're flying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of where my head space was with that.
That's a good point.
That is interesting how there's no identifiers. There's no logo. There's no nothing. It's just interesting. Very, very interesting.
Not every day, but not infrequent. I said over the last 80 years, at least 122 have come down. So there are helicopters. He was on the team to pick up debris. This one was, of course, intact. It began to pulse and operate and came back to life, as it were. And the entire group that was there basically were put in some kind of a stasis electromagnetically. Sounds like science fiction. Teleported back to the helipad instantly. But before that happened, he had this meeting with two of these extraterrestrial biological entities, a male and a female. And this is a very accurate, according to the whistleblower who needs to come forward when there's adult protection. They had no pinna, the ears outside, and had no hair. And there was a male and a female. And it was made very clear to him by these beings that they were completely non-hostile. All extraterrestrial civilizations are non-hostile. If they were hostile, the technologies they have would have been made quite clear to us in August of 1945. We'll get.
And that's exactly what Mr. Ebba was saying, right?
Yeah.
Ebba?
Yeah.
Earlier on, you were saying if they wanted to, they could squash us. It's basically us looking at a bug on the ground.
Exactly.
And you can kill that bug in a heartbeat if you wanted to, but you choose not to. You choose to have that restraint, and that's what these beings are doing. Look, if they can get here, they are way more advanced than we are. They could take us down immediately if they wanted to. So that's fascinating.
Exactly. And I think, again, having us live so long, I think they're kind of past their kind of, primal violent stage of their species. So in my opinion, I believe that these species of ETs, they're not looking for violence. They're not looking, to take control of places. They're all about, life and exploration. Understanding what life is, what consciousness is. Exploring other galaxies. I mean, that's what I would do as a species, or myself. I would want to do that. Now I want to go and destroy people that are, less evolved than I am. I want to see civilizations grow and prosper.
Right.
So.
We're very primitive to them. We're basically like the cavemen to them. So they're like, you're right, Ebba, they're beyond the wars and all this other BS that we have here on Earth. They're beyond all that. They're elevated mentally. And
they're more so here, and they say, "What's this Versace you speak of?"
Versace.
Go broke.
So this later, he had an event when he tried to leave that command, where there was a fake, what's called a programmed life form alien. These have been used in what you hear in the fabled lore of abductions and stuff in the UFO lore. This is actually a man-made creature, but it's not living per se. It has a covering the skin like. It tried to take him with one of these ARVs in command, and some people camouflaged in the ground near his truck. After he got out of this command, he was disgusted with what was happening. He no longer wanted to be part of that project, but they weren't happy he left. I told him it's a miracle that you lived to tell this tale. And so what happened is that his pickup truck went into sort of complete lock. Motor died because of this man-made UAP. He opened the door because he saw this creature, which he thought was an alien. It's not. And he hit it, it fell, he kicked it, and it split open this outer, and he saw the integrated circuits and fiber optics and what have you. This man I've dealt with quite a bit. He was ready to come to the aero skiff. He had a nasty encounter with people who threatened him directly. This is recent. And so we have not been able to bring him to the Aero Pentagon briefing. Next. And this is one that came in 2009. We had a witness SL. We call him Coast Guard. And this is his incoming letter to me, redacted information. And then he told us about an event off of Guam where his Coast Guard ship, which is a buoy servicing vehicle out there, was called in on a mutual assist. And he got there, and you'll see on the next picture, there was an extraterrestrial vehicle that we had downed, but got lost in the deep waters there in the Marianas Trench. And it had gotten caught and tangled up. And oddly, a fisherman net from Japan, a trawler, big trawler. And so they were called in to retrieve this. He went and did retrieve it. He was part of the crew that most of them went down quarters, but with blacked out windows, he was there above ground, took a very sharp object to try to scratch it, impenetrable, could not scratch it, could not penetrate it. These are very advanced metallurgy, nanomolecular material, interstellar vehicles. Next. So what's going on with this? All of you have seen over the last 4 or 5 years these footage has come out and the Pentagon's confirmed there are three-dimensional objects with sensors and what have you. The so-called Tic Tac and others. Now, I've spoken to one of the pilots who chased these objects. You've seen it on CNN, 60 Minutes, all these places. What hasn't been told when this event happened in the early 2000s is that these objects, which you'll see in a moment, particularly one of them, we have matching top secret witness testimony of them being a man-made object that our jet pilots and military don't know exists. This is dangerous in terms of deconflicting operations. So let's go to the next and play this.
Dude, this is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's a look at that thing. It's rotating.
This is the so-called Tic Tac now.
Echo 6-1 Tango, Roger. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger.
Now, of course, this has been called an unknown UAP, what have you. We can excuse the Pentagon and most of the military and the White House and the Congress for not knowing what this is, because the operations that have been building these are deep black illegal, and they are not disclosing it properly to the authorities in our constitutional democracy and republic. This is based on a sighting of a group of people, is basically the same object in the 1960s, 1967. Let's go to the next slide. And it's sort of a sketch here, the so-called vintage steam boiler. These have been seen in multiple places around since the 1950s and 60s. Next. Here's one that's a very good color illustration of it. Notice the probes on it. Extraterrestrial vehicles do not have those. These electrostatic discharge objects. We're not going to get into all the physics of this. Our team understands it, and we're welcome to share that in a longer brief with media folks. And here's the 2004 off the coast of San Diego Tic Tac. It's fundamentally the same object. Next. And here it is. We have a top secret whistleblower came forward a few months ago in 1991. So now we're talking quite some time ago, way before the 2004 event. That is offloading of a C-130, one of these UAPs, but it's actually a man-made one. And here you have the color illustration. This man is very afraid to come forward. He was warned not to, and at one point was told he would be, quote, executed. Next.
Wow.
So here's what we need to go through very quickly. It's a lot to unpack. This is not intended to be, we just did a 2-day conference right next door. The media are welcome to get that entire event with all the details for you if you wish to have it, or people get it to you. But basically, there are two types of these so-called UAPs. And I've said this. Some are extraterrestrial vehicles, ETVs, and some are ATs or ARVs, advanced reproduction vehicles or alien reproduction vehicles. People use different terms. The extraterrestrial groups are absolutely not hostile. However, screaming caps, they are increasingly concerned about human hostility and our weapon systems, which include nuclear and scalar, the so-called, Dr. Zahari shared this weekend, about what scalar electromagnetic fields are. But just to give you a sense of it, you all know what an electromagnetic pulse is. That's at the speed of light. The scalar systems are, instead of a wave, is a point that goes out longitudinally. Some call them longitudinal waves. These have been studied. Tesla talked about scalar systems. They have been weaponized. And those are the primary systems used to target and hit these electromagnetic field propulsion craft that cause them to fall like a rock out of the sky. You do not travel from another star system and cannot navigate a thunderstorm in New Mexico. That ain't going to happen. So even at that point, these had been early systems. We have a FBI memo from a field agent that we released. It's now one of the most watched, viewed documents on the FBI website of the fact that a field agent at the after Roswell said to J. Edgar Hoover that a disc was downed because we had switched on a new.
Sorry, real quick. Can you go back to this where you had the slide up?
Oh yeah.
All right. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
You're good.
So I just want to go back to right here, number 2. Right, this is what we talked about. They're not hostile to Earth or humanity. However, they are increasingly concerned about human hostility and weapon systems. And again, this goes back to I don't know why us as a species of humans we have to target, shoot, kill, blow everything up that is unknown to us. So I get it. Like we want to reverse engineer. That's great. We want to make all these advancements, but I don't understand why we can't do that in a more civil manner. Like make some type of peace, contact with them, not shoot them out of the sky and and kill some.
It basically comes down to the fact of what humans do to humans. Man kills man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if we do it to ourselves, it's not going to stop us from looking at beyond species outside of our own galaxy, unfortunately.
Right. Exactly, but I think that right there is what is going to limit human growth. Because
absolutely. Absolutely. As I said, man kills man, when it comes down to it. I mean, even us as a society, we're destroying our own planet.
Well, look at cell phones, right? I mean, we have the most powerful computer in our hands. Everybody's got one of these, right? Every pocket computer is more powerful than the computer system on the Saturn V rocket.
It's crazy.
But what do we use it for? We use it for TikTok and pornography.
Exactly.
Well, 1 out of the 2 for me.
And also don't forget Diz Twitter too.
Yeah,
Diz
Twitter. Exactly.
And on that note, shameless plug. Subscribe, like, comment this video. Check us out on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
Orange Nerd Show 55. But yeah, I mean that's where we are as a species. Like we have this, and we use it for entertainment primarily. And when they invented the email, when email was initially invented, it was a system designed for intercommunication within a certain agency. And like, when this comes out, it's going to change society. What that tells us is, yeah, it'll change society, but never the direction you really think. Because like George has said, man kills man. We're not there yet. I mean, we're so primitive. We're our species has been around for, they say, 250,000 years is when Homo sapiens, have started appearing, in terms of like the genealogical and anthropological records. And that's on a 4.5 billion year time period for how long the Earth has been around. So we're a blip. Yeah. And if these species have been around for 300,000 years longer than we have.
So technically, like when we say the term like extraterrestrial or aliens or what have you, we're just as much of an extraterrestrial to them as they are to us, if not more, because as you mentioned, Slimer, we're like the baby of the group, so to speak. And going back to your statement, even like with the cell phones, like we use it for entertainment purposes, or we use it for work purposes or what have you. But to think of what we're capable of doing, because us as humans, we only use a small fraction of our brains. Can you imagine if we use the full potential of everything that goes on up here? It's like that's where I feel like we would kind of I wouldn't say match like other species that would be out there, but I feel like that's where we're kind of on the lower end of the food chain, so to speak.
These other species that probably have been able to tap into that, like as humans, we only tap into 10% of our brains. These other species probably maximize 100% or closer to it than we do, and they figure that out.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that you hear a lot of stories about people who have contact with ETs, like I'll say Grays for this section, but how when they communicate, it's by telepathy. There's no speaking with the mouth.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm wondering if they've evolved over that time to be able to have that ability. You know, they got the big head, little mouth. You know, they probably barely even use it. So there's a lot of these things that they have learned over the course of their species' lifetime that they don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm just afraid with number two here that so they're not hostile towards us, but what if continuous us being more hostile towards them, shooting them down, you know, and whatever, like what if they eventually get sick of it and then decide to attack one day? Not saying they will, but it's either that or they're very understanding of our species. It's like, yeah, these guys are going to be violent for a while, so we get it. But it's like, man, like just I just want them to stop, you know, like hurting these other these other species, because it's like hurting someone else.
Yeah. Well, it's a risk. It's a huge risk, but we don't know what we're dealing with here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
100%.
We have a FBI memo from a field agent that we released. It's now one of the most watched, viewed documents on the FBI website, of the fact that a field agent at the Roswell said to J. Edgar Hoover that a disc was downed because we had switched on a new radar system. So let me explain the euphemisms that are used in this field. Radar can track an aircraft by bouncing a wave off of the fuselage, but it also can have piggybacked an active system to hit it. So you can have an active weapon system embedded in a radar system. So that's what began to be experimented with, and this is why from the mid-40s forward, there were a number of these downed objects that we've been able to document. If we've documented 122 of them, I suspect there have been multiple numbers of that. So the what's very important about this, these technologies are unsanctioned. They are illegal operations, and this can be proven in any court of law. And we're about to launch a massive civilian RICO action, racketeer influence, corrupt organization action against the corporations and the individuals involved. These technologies would immediately solve the world's energy, environmental, and poverty problems. Why? These are what people call, senior executive with a big Fortune 100 company contacted us. They're called, some people say free energy, but they're 0 point and quantum vacuum energy systems, pulling energy out of, let's call it the fabric of space-time. These begin to be developed. Tesla knew about this. So I think Elon Musk doesn't have a Tesla, he has a Musk. A real Tesla, we didn't have to plug in. I'd have one little battery in it. But the point is that these technologies would have a huge revolutionary effect. Macroeconomically, there would be some losers: oil industry, public utilities, nuclear power, now wind, solar, surface roads eventually would be obsolete. So it's a very significant technological advance. And for nearing a century, they have all been withheld. We just released an educational documentary film you can all see called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. It's a 2-hour expose of this. I suggest everyone look at it.
That's a really good documentary, by the way. So in that documentary, he goes into detail about how much in economic, how much in terms of the economic value of goods, utilities, export, that would replace, and it's about $4 quadrillion.
Whoa, Jesus.
Yeah. So yeah, these organizations, these companies that depend on the oil industry to keep on going day after day, or the utility companies to bring you energy, the car manufacturers, the boat manufacturers, the tire industry, everything. I mean, everything down to the nuts and bolts on vehicles, right? Adds up to about a $4 quadrillion industry. So I'm not saying that the gas industry knows this or the gas industry is not interested in the UFO programs. However, had they found out, or if, like, let's say, cold fusion or 0 point energy became an open source technology for all the engineers in the world, China, Russia, North Korea, here you go, have 0 point energy. So that way you don't have to rely on fossil fuels and coal and nuclear energy. I mean, what does that do? I mean, like, it changes the entire structure of how we receive and consume energy. And
yeah, and it even changes like the world stage in terms of conflict. I mean, we get into these wars because of oil and things like that. I mean, it changes the whole equation.
Everything, dude.
Yeah,
Everything.
and it's just Here's the thing, for me as someone who loves like the high technology and whatnot, right? It's just very frustrating that, we could potentially have these things, but progress on like the public level is very stalled by these type of things. It's just very frustrating. It's like we could be so far ahead by now, but of course, and I want to say this back to the previous picture with like the underground like bases and bunkers and stuff. It's like if they put that much energy into hiding all of that and building these big ass speed trains and whatever inside these bunkers, dude. Like imagine if they put all that into the effort for like the public area, and like how much
Mhm.
like far we could be.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Well said.
These organizations have also been targeting and successfully down to ET vehicles. The covert group has technologies to launch a convincing false flag operation detrimental to the national security. This was the chief topic of my briefing for three-star General Patrick Hughes at the Pentagon during the Clinton years, because he was not read into this. There were some events that had happened where you could trigger a world war because your top folks in the Congress, the White House, the Pentagon, and CIA, many of them, if they're not part of this covert group, this deep black group illegally, they have no idea what's going on because of the nature of TSSCI, the hyper compartmentalization that happened in the 50s. So these actions really are a threat to world security and national security, and they have to be reined in immediately. I want you to use my words carefully here. A clock, I understand, has been put on this getting resolved through hearings and other means, and by the end of this year, it needs to be resolved. And that's all I will say at this point. So these actions really are dangerous. They are crimes against humans worldwide. We're going to get into that. And some of these crimes need to be referred to the International Court. Some of them involve, as you'll hear from our attorney, crimes against humanity. We applaud the current actions of the Congress and the President to sign the bill to get to the bottom of this. They have very courageously stepped forward. We're trying to get them everything they would need to know. And I will tell you, the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive literally has everything they would need to know to get to the absolute end of this. It's been handed to them. So the chief characteristics of this illegal secret government called ISG projects, they're the CIA folks and Pentagon people and most of the people in the government are victims of this. They're not culpable. When people say, why is the government hiding all this? Well, the government is very complex and it's highly compartmentalized. These operations have been run by a clandestine, unsanctioned group. And therefore, our military and our intelligence community and our political leaders are, in fact, victims of this secrecy. I want to refer very briefly to one of the very first CIA director, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, who in 1961 wrote to the New York Times and said, the secrecy around UFOs is a threat to the national security, not the UFOs. So what has happened is it's all been turned on its head, where they're trying to say UAPs are a threat. Well, the man-made ones are, the extraterrestrial ones are. This has to be made crystal clear to the American people so we don't stumble into an absolute disaster of epic proportions. So these operations that I've been referring to in the United States, we have parallel projects in Australia at Pine Gap. There are projects in the United Kingdom. These are all very sub rosa, off the radar. I have done briefings for the Minister of Defenses of Australia, Canada, and the Great Britain. None of them were read into these projects, and yet we had evidence they were ongoing. So they also act without acknowledging any national boundaries. What do I mean by that? So we have an operational facilities in other countries that we move in and out of with alacrity, without any knowledge or approval of that government. So this is also not good, obviously, and dangerous. But because of the nature of our operations, which can be cloaked, that have these AT or ARV vehicles, they can move off radar, they can go in and out of areas, and we have witnesses who can prove what I just said. Blackmail, bribery, and intimidation is the stock and trade, and is the operational core of this illegal secret government program. Many of our whistleblowers have been threatened and have been blackmailed, and in the case of some of us, attempts at bribery, including myself. Next. So these are the actions we recommend immediately, now that this is all coming out by the Congress and the government. Next. And I want to remind everyone who's in office, and all military know this, I do solemnly swear to affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. Next. So this is quite a list. I want to go through it very quickly. These have been conveyed over to the government in various offices. This investigation of the UAP issue, and based on the intelligence archive, should happen immediately and be increased in its pace and scope. The presidential executive order needs to occur immediately to stand down all targeting of these extraterrestrial vehicles by these covert projects, because it is dangerous and it is an existential threat to security for the entire world, not just our country. The executive order requiring all military intelligence contractors and other agencies of the U.S. government to disclose to Congress and White House all information, materiel, and technologies and locations and related assets. If not complied with, within around 6 months, we think that the offending party should be prosecuted criminally for treason and other crimes against the United States. The executive order we need an executive order where the State Department and Pentagon coordinate a global diplomatic as opposed to military response to these extraterrestrial civilizations. Should have happened. Barry Goldwater, Senator Goldwater, told me it was a, excuse my language, goddamn mistake then and goddamn mistake now that this was ever kept secret like this. He was not allowed in this project. When he tried to get in, General Curtis LeMay told him he could never ask him about it again. We have that whole trail with former Senator Goldwater. So we also need to have an executive order so that the U.S. Patent Office that has seized these zero-point and related technologies under bogus application of the national security laws, and we have a copy of an inventor had one of these happen to him. Those have to be reversed. Those patents have to be released, and inventors and scientists around the world that have come across these, look, the laws of the universe are universal, and they've been discovered by folks. They get grabbed, they're either put on a black shelf or they get this national security order slapped on them. Those have to be reversed, and those should be released open source to the public. We also need an executive order to immediately require that the U.S. Space Force and Pentagon coordinate assets with the State Department, the United Nations, and other governments to initiate further open communication with these civilizations. The Space Force could be very useful in this regard if it's deployed properly. All of the military would be very important. And I want to emphasize, both the people who work in most of these corporations and in these agencies and the Pentagon have no knowledge excuse me, of these illegal operations. And we should not paint them all with the brush of being culpable. It's not. These are the rogue elements. An executive order to immediately disclose advanced energy generating technologies should happen. These are held by some of these corporations and agencies. This would, within 10 to 20 years, end all pollution on Earth and all global poverty. This is not a pipe dream. Those technologies are extant. They have been around for a while, and we need them, and we need them 60 years ago, 70 years ago. Next. So, you know, these.
So real quick, I just want to say that So I got Universal Studios old footage playing over here on my TV, and E.T. and Steven Spielberg on the TV right now. So
See,
Nice.
it comes all
Hell
together.
yeah.
It comes
it all
all
comes
together.
together, man.
That's awesome. And yep, absolutely.
And
I
I
lived
think it's
through
kind
all
of
this.
interesting too that kind of like on that subject, when you look at these big name moguls in Hollywood, it all falls back on around the same people that kind of create these same narratives when it
Right.
comes to like aliens and extraterrestrials. Like I mentioned earlier, you have Spielberg, you have Lucas, you have Cameron, so it's like you have like these set of individuals. And honestly, I'm gonna go balls to the wall. I'm gonna go all the way back to Walt Disney himself. It's like there's certain people that they fall like in a different caliber than what a regular everyday creative would come up with. It's like when you look at a movie like Avatar, it's like the fact that came from Cameron's head, and it's like, well, again, like what point of reference did he get out of that to create something like that? And the same thing with Spielberg with E.T. and George Lucas with Star Wars. It's like it's quite interesting when you look at it as a whole factor.
Well,
Yeah.
well then, real quick, I just want to bring up too, like,
Sure.
okay, so I'm in by no means an expert in like human history and what we learn and all that stuff, but I will say, like, George, what you were saying before, as a reference point, humans have had to learn, like to be taught certain stuff from somewhere, right? So like science, engineering, mathematics, and then this is all over the world. So I'm like, okay, at some point, the people that came up with those, where did they come up with them from?
Hmm.
So it's like, I think someone had to be taught something in some way.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So the reason I'm going through these is that there's a specific action plan that we have. You can read these. They'll be in the press briefing materials if you need them. And I think it needs to happen very quickly because this is all going to come out and there needs to be an organized response. Next. The congressional recommendations, Congress should immediately pass a $50 billion research bill to develop and bring forward the safe technologies related to zero point and quantum vacuum energy systems. We provided 50-some billion for the chip industry. This is way more important. And frankly, it needs to come out very, very soon, given what we're facing with the climate and global poverty issues. That's something that needs to be put on the front burner. It is certainly a more important agenda than the partisan bickering that we see today. Amnesty provisions need to be passed explicitly for people wanting to come forward. I have a major number of folks who are executives, corporate, also whistleblowers, some of whom have been involved in activities that are not legal. If they come forward, they should have immunity so that this can all be unwound in a orderly and peaceful way. That needs to happen very quickly, and it should be included in a bill this year. The Congress should also convene open hearings on this. I understand from discussions with a member of the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee that this has been discussed by the chairman and the Speaker of the House. I think that should be put on the front burner and move forward very quickly. We will provide all information and have already provided all information they will need. There are, I'm sure, other archives that can be brought to bear, and other whistleblowers are now going to be coming forward, probably several a week at this point. Congress should also pass legislation to explicitly protect the personal safety, like a witness protection program. It is not an exaggeration to say that in the 30-some years I've been dealing with this, I have dealt with multiple people who have been flat out threatened with execution. One of them is sitting here at this table, perhaps more. Next. So this, next slide. One of the things I just want to mention is the Lost Century was crowdfunded, and look at the subtitle, How to Reclaim It. Because there's a century of technological and scientific progress that would greatly benefit all of humanity, not just the United States. We all live on this beautiful sphere floating through space together. It needs to very much come forward. It's 100 years is long enough for secrecy. Next. So I want to introduce someone I've gotten to know. We first met.
I just want to say before we move any further, Slimer, I want to thank you for bringing this video to our attention. This is extremely, extremely fascinating stuff. And we talked earlier on the phone, and you were saying like it kind of changed your worldview. It is. It's worldview changing stuff here. Your whole perception of everything changes when you hear stuff like this. So, but I just want to thank you, brother, for bringing this to our attention, because fascinating stuff that Dr. Stephen Greer was bringing to the table.
No, you're welcome, man, and I hope it was world changing for you guys. I mean, it was for me. My order of things that are important in my life kind of changed a little bit when you get it privy to what's going on, that things are being hidden from you and things are being concealed from you more so than you think. Like, we already know that the government's doing shady stuff, but this just adds this is like when Neo found out what the Matrix was, kind of world changing view stuff, and the fact that they're concealing free energy and, cold fusion, and that a lot of the wars can be prevented simply by having this technology being given to the public, open source.
Well, to be fair, Slimer, actually, the answer is on Michael's lap right now. To prevent war, the galaxy is on Orion's belt.
Yeah, there you go.
There it is.
Yeah, there you go, man. But
there it is.
Yeah.
But no, Slimer, you're right. Sorry, OG, to cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good.
But yeah, you're right. It's like that. It pisses me off to know like that there's these technologies that we could have had, and society, the whole world could have prospered from this and made we could have advanced, and that's not happening. Progress is being stalled, and that's just that infuriates me to no end, dude. Like, come on, man.
Yep. No, 100%, Michael. 100%. 100%. Fascinating stuff, dude. I mean, this is crazy. We have to do another one of these breaking down aliens. I could talk about aliens every week, I swear. It's like, I love this stuff. I absolutely love this stuff. So, but again, thank you, gentlemen, for nerding out today with me and just kind of talking shop. I'll start with Mr. Italiano with his Carl's Jr. shirt. We do have a special Carl's. we do have a very special Carl's Jr. drop at the end. Well, the one that we usually drop, but with the shirt, we have to. Yeah. But George, if you could let everybody home know where they could find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. And before I do so, I just have to say, for all who have stuck with us for the almost 2 hours on this subject matter, you are a true Orange Grove 55 diehard fan. So we appreciate you and thank you very much. But if you want to find me on social media, you could do so on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There it is. And down below with another awesome shirt, Super Mario World.
Oh, what?
What? Super Nintendo. we got the one, the only Mr. Michael Ebba. Thank you, Michael, for joining us today, sir.
Of course, OG, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. As always, Slimer, thank you so much for the video, dude. I am always down shop to fucking talk about aliens, bro. Space, aliens, all that stuff. I'm good, dude. Like, let's do it. But yeah, so you guys can find me on Instagram, Michael Ebba, and then also on Twitter/X at Michael Ebba 1991.
You heard the man. Go follow him right now. And last but not least, we got Slimer. Slimer, thank you again for the amazing video and the insight. Amazing stuff. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on X at SlimeSquare84, and you can find me here on Orange Grove 55. And for more sobering topics, we'll put the link for the Disclosure Project in the link to the video, so you could check that out. Obviously, there's a lot more going on there. It's a very deep rabbit hole, guys. I mean, you can spend an entire lifetime researching stuff, and you should, right? Like, make yourself knowledgeable about what's going on out there, because the world is more than meets the eye, and we're here to talk about it on Orange Nerd.
Yeah, 100%. And thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below with all your thoughts on everything we talked about today: UFOs, aliens, other civilizations, Michael Ebba's Nintendo shirt, whatever you want to talk about. Right here down below in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. We're going to close out with some Carl's Jr. Good day, everybody.
세상이 누구에게나 공평하게 추악해.